Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, June 16th, 2017, the WNW 288. And today I am going to take the helicopter up to about 10,000 feet to get a bird's eye view of what's going on. This has been bothering me all week. I've been working on this all week long. But before, I want to start with the symptoms of propaganda. And I've told you that the mainstream media is propaganda. Let's just refresh here for information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. That certainly is the definition of what the mainstream media has been doing since the time when Donald Trump was first nominated to be the Republican nominee for the party for president of the United States, and it has gone on after he won the election. But let's this is the basically a symptom of the propaganda. Attack stuns Washington. We're talking about the shooter that went to a Republican baseball practice when they have this game, Democrats versus Republicans, every year in Washington, D.C., and started making political assassinations of Republican lawmakers. And I want to read you this right here. This is the Associated Press version in my little newspaper. Gunman attacks GOP lawmakers, and let's get in here. Number 3 House Republican in critical condition after shooting 4 others wounded, attacker killed by police. Here we go. Angered by Trump and Republicans. Well, that's why he did it. He was angered by Trump and Republicans. That's outrageous, folks. And more of the propaganda. And when I'm saying propaganda, news reporting is being a fair arbiter of the truth. Do you think the mainstream press, the AP, the Washington Post, the New York Times, NBC, ABC, MSNBC, CBS, do you think they're fair arbiters of the truth? The answer is resounding no. It means they're propaganda. And when you start listing anonymous sources with documents you don't see, and that's your reporting. That's not reporting. That's a political hit job. It's propaganda. Here's the latest political hit job right here. Special counsel is investigating Trump for possible obstruction of justice. Officials say. Officials. They're officials. Just officials. They're just officials. 5 people briefed on the interview request, speaking on the condition of anonymity, because they were not authorized to discuss the matter publicly, said that Daniel Coates, current director of the National Intelligence, Mike Rogers, head of National Security Agency, and Rogers' recently departed deputy, Richard Leggett, agreed to be interviewed by Muller's investigators as early as this week. Now, folks, let me just say to you that for weeks and weeks, Congress, and I'll bet you all the mainstream media knew that Donald Trump was not a target of the investigation. They knew it. Even when Donald Trump tweeted, hey, thank you, James Comey, when he fired James Comey. I'm going to get into this big bird's eye view. That's all part of it. Thank you for telling me I was not a target of the investigation 3 times. That was absolutely stone cold true. Everybody in Congress knew it. Mark Rubio had a moment in Congress saying, boy, that was the only fact that wasn't leaked out when, the hearings when they were talking with James Comey with him under oath in congressional hearings. And here we have, when he is under investigation, according to 5 unnamed sources. That's the headline, Trump under investigation. He was never under investigation and may not still be. And then the Washington Post has the gall to say, well, we have 5 unnamed sources. Oh, really? Why don't you get 10? Why don't you get 20? Hey, how about 100 unnamed sources? You could just make up whatever number you want to give people the impression that your reporting is legitimate and not, in fact, propaganda. Because that's what it is. It's propaganda. And then you wonder why Donald Trump goes to Twitter, because he certainly can't get his message out. And oh, by the way, his press secretary, was out saying, a week or so ago, and I didn't mention this earlier. She was filling in, for the, Spicer, and she says, she's asked about Twitter. It's Huckabee, and she says, the president over and over again is just getting past the biased mainstream media. It's a way for the president to get his message out past the biased media without the filters of the biased media. Said it over and over again. Nobody in the room said, hey, wait a minute. Whoa, we're not biased. Not a word. Over and over again, she said this to the to the mainstream propaganda. But here is Donald Trump's tweet from yesterday. Crooked Hillary destroyed phones with a hammer, bleached emails, and had husband meet with the Attorney General, this is Loretta Lynch, days before she was cleared. And they talk about obstruction. He's absolutely, positively correct. And that is his way of getting things out. Jim Acosta, the reporter I used to work with at CNN, tweets out that Donald Trump did not meet with Steve Scalise, one of the congressman who's in critical condition, did not meet with Steve Scalise in his room with the family. Total lie. Totally wrong. And he's not fired for this in any way. And this is just more of the propaganda. Now, you may think, well, it's just a tweet. Well, listen, he's got 280,000 followers. And nobody gives a darn about Jim Acosta by just being Jim Acosta. It's Jim Acosta at CNN. Just like all the Twitter accounts at the New York Times reporters, the Wall Street Journal, the Huffington Post, the Washington Post, CBS, ABC, NBC, all have a direct broadcast link out just like the president. But nobody cares about what they say. And they have tens of thousands of followers. Nobody cares about what they say. If it were not they were working for one of these big alphabet soup companies or a big .com news quote, propaganda agency. Listen, if I was Jim Acosta's boss and he made an erroneous tweet, number one, I wouldn't let any reporter tweet because nobody cares about you tweeting you're John Smith unless you're John Smith working for CNN. Unless you're Jim Acosta working for CNN. I wouldn't allow any reporter tweet and have an absolute direct link out without any editorial control. I was under complete editorial control at CNN. Whether I did, produced a note or depleted uranium or some fraud or something, I didn't just get on the air and just start talking. That's what Twitter is. And that's a broadcast. And Jim Acosta made a absolutely false statement and didn't retract it, just took the tweet down. I'd fire him for that. I would have fired him a long time ago. The first time Donald Trump stood in front of him at his first press conference before when he was president-elect, and he said, "Oh, I have a new name for you guys, CNN. Very fake news. Boom, you're out of the White House. Get out. I'm not sending you back there." But this is all part of the propaganda that has been going on. This shooting is really not anybody's single fault. It's the fault of this guy thinking that Donald Trump and his administration are a bunch of crooks, a bunch of thieves, that they won the election illegally, that he stole the election, that the Trump had collusion with the Russian, which is a total lie. And now a new total lie that he's under investigation for obstruction of justice. Total lie. Which tells me, wow, they can't get him on this total Russia collusion story, which is total BS. I mean, how do they know that the Russians colluded? They asked to see the servers of the DNC, and DNC let a third party look through the servers and didn't allow the FBI to look at the servers. So all we have is the people that the DNC hired to say, oh, it was the Russians. Even though, WikiLeaks released the fact that they had tools to make signatures that could make it look like the Russians hacked something. But we'll never know now, will we? James Comey, again, head of the FBI, when CNN said, hey, go pound sand. You don't get to look at our servers of this profound, intrusion in our democracy. And Jim Comey asked to see the servers. He went, oh, okay. You don't want to show them to us? Okay, I won't get a warrant. Profound national security issue, and oh, you don't want me to see him, Democratic National Committee? Oh, it's okay. But the Russians did it. Outrageous. And I couldn't believe this was in USA Today, but I didn't see it in the newspaper. I read that every day. I didn't see it on the website. I can't hardly stomach it after I read the newspaper because it's propaganda. I'm going to try to be a reporter. But this was on their website, and I want to bring this up because this whole witch hunt that Donald Trump says it is a witch hunt. It is a witch hunt, my opinion as a reporter. There's no there. Comey testified on May 3rd that nobody obstructed justice. Now, even if you just, try to push somebody in a certain direction, that's considered obstruction of justice. When he was asked point blank, anybody obstruct? No, it hasn't happened. Anybody obstruct your investigation? No. No, I mean, you figure that a meeting with the president where the president clears out the room, that he'd remember that. So, no, that's on May 3rd. Then he's like, well, I took it as direction. Totally bogus. And I leaked this memo that I wrote. Who knows when he wrote the memo? But I digress. Let me just get in with this, and I want to give you the helicopter picture. I want to take you up in the air here a little bit. So here we have Robert. This is in USA Today. Robert Mueller should recuse himself from Russian investigation. Now remember, Mueller and Comey are buddies going back 15 years. Okay, and here's the person who wrote this. Who is William D. Otis, an adjunct professor at Georgetown University Law Center, former federal prosecutor, former special counsel for President George H.W., that's 41, Bush. And this is, he quotes a couple of different sections here. CFR section 445.2 provides a part. Disqualification arising from personal or political relationship. Would you say James Comey has a personal and political relationship to Robert Mueller? Yes. Number 2, he quotes this. 28 U.S.C. Section 528, partially that participation may result in a personal, financial, or political conflict of interest or the appearance thereof, and then ... shall result in removal from office. Removal from the special prosecutor's office shall be removed. Now let's take the helicopter up in the air. Why have they been doing this? I've been thinking about this over and over, and we have these little snippets of the Clinton Foundation, and we have Comey, and he allows, he gives everybody immunity, and then he destroys all the laptops. Everybody got immunity from Comey in the Justice Department. Everybody got immunity. And then Comey at the FBI destroys all their laptops. Doesn't prosecute a single one, doesn't have a prosecution, doesn't start a prosecution, let alone get any conviction. You usually give somebody immunity, so they roll over on somebody bigger, so you can prosecute them and get a conviction. We didn't get any of that, but Comey did destroy the computers. And as Donald Trump said, bleach bit, hammers to hard drives, destroyed 33,000 emails while they were under subpoena. I mean, that's not obstruction of justice, really. So you look at James Comey, and he's already blown the whole obstruction case. He can't come later after he's testified. Oh, no obstruction. Oh, that hasn't happened. Oh, no. People say, he went on to explain, people say you shouldn't be spending your money there. We don't think there's anything there. But that's not obstruction of justice. No, that has not happened on my watch. This is May 3rd. This is after February 14th when this meeting had where supposedly, and Trump denies this, supposedly Donald Trump says, can't you just let that go? I would hope you would just let that go. Comey thinks that's obstruction of justice. So, back up to that. So, why would James Comey leak this memo? And he says he did it for the express reason of getting a special prosecutor. You know what I think? I think somebody needs immunity too. Did Robert Mueller, or is Robert Mueller going to give James Comey immunity? I mean, after all, James Comey, now we find out from Circuit.com that, maybe 30 days, a month ago or so, he's had classified meetings with Congress where he says, I got this email between a couple of high-ranking Democrats that are saying that, Loretta Lynch is, no matter what happens, is not going to let any investigation go. She's going to kibosh the investigations, what he says. In Congress, he said, Loretta Lynch told me that, I couldn't call it an investigation. The FBI doesn't do matters. She said, call it a matter. The FBI doesn't do matters. But yet Comey agreed. Okay, I'll call it a matter. That's the tip of the obstruction of justice iceberg, especially when she's meeting with Bill Clinton, the husband of the target of the investigation, who is either also a target of the investigation or a witness in the investigation. She's meeting with him in Phoenix on her plane, that he walks onto her plane, has a 30-minute or so meeting on the plane, which I think she broke the law right there. What's Comey doing? Is he angling for his own immunity deal? Who's going to give James Comey immunity? And think about what happened here. So here we have this investigation, which I've been harping on. Hillary Clinton used private servers to cover the fact she was taking treasonous bribes. Uranium-1, a fifth of our uranium production, has fallen into the hands of Russia after 9 people gave $145 million. This is well laid out in the Clinton cash book. That they gave $145 million in donations, I think they're bribes, to the now reportedly shutting down Clinton Global Initiative, the Clinton charity, shutting down. There's no way Hillary and Bill Clinton, and incidentally, Bill Clinton, doubled his speaking fees in Russia. There's no way that Hillary Clinton could be monetizing the office of the Secretary of State without a lot of important people knowing about it and looking the other way and or covering her. You can't raise something like $4 billion. Remember that after the Haiti earthquakes? They've had all kinds of protests, and all kinds of people have spoken out. Former Haiti officials, top officials said, hey, they raised billions of dollars. We got hardly nothing. We got, 5, 6, 7, 8% of it. We didn't get hardly anything of it. You raise billions of dollars for people who have been ravaged by earthquakes in Haiti, and the money doesn't go there. Where'd it go? Nobody asks any questions. You can't have that level of ripoff and fraud and charity fraud and monetization and bribes. You can't have that level without a lot of people knowing about it. It just can't happen. And so this is why you get, in the newspaper, and they never covered that, the whole Hillary thing. But what they will cover, Comey calls Trump a liar like he's a child. And, come right back, Comey lied under oath. Maybe he did. But what do we get after this whole thing, with James Comey? James Comey, who basically said there was an obstruction of justice, that the president was not a target of the investigation, told him that multiple times. What do we get? We get this. We get Congress ramps up Russia probes. They got to find something, folks. They have to find something to cover the fact that this fraud and crime has been going on in Washington to a very high degree. And let me tell you, this goes all the way up to the office of the President of the United States. Remember, and I've harped on this, President Obama knew Hillary Clinton had a private server. He conversed with her via email on her private server. It was also reported that Barack Obama had his own independent, non-government email account, which he conversed with Hillary Clinton on. That seemed not to be a very big story. This goes all the way to the top. This is multi-billion dollar fraud. Charles Ortel came on and said this could be $100 billion. This is huge. You can't have that level of fraud at a key government office, Secretary of State, without lots of people knowing about it and basically either A, looking the other way, or B, condoning it. It can't happen unless that is going on. And remember, Hillary was supposed to win, and that way this could continue unabated. Hillary Clinton was supposed to win, and she didn't. Surprise. So now you have the motivation. Why are they this intent to try to paste Donald Trump as some kind of a traitor, some kind of a guy who colluded with Russia, when indeed he did not, and there is still no evidence of that. And now they want to move on to obstruction of justice. When the obstruction of justice with the Obama administration, Loretta Lynch, Hillary Clinton, her staff, all got immunity deals, the obstruction of justice is off the charts. So why did the President of the United States use all the powers of his office, the FBI, James Comey, and the intelligence agencies to try to smear, surveil, destroy? Donald Trump was wiretapped. Donald Trump was surveilled. His staff was surveilled. General Flynn had a transcript released. These leaks are felonies. They're all felonious. Why would you take the chance on creating felonies unless what you're trying to cover up is a much bigger felony? Let's call it treason, what it really is. Treason was happening at the highest levels of the United States of America. Even when Donald Trump talked about exiting the Paris Climate Accord, this one little line in there about how they've already taken money and they shouldn't have done that and given it to this cause, and it wasn't appropriated. It wasn't given out correctly. They shouldn't have done that, he said. We're talking about billions of dollars. We're talking about crime, fraud, and we're talking flat out about treason. And if you just take that over to the USA Today. Here we have again, and they didn't cover this treason. The mainstream media missed the biggest story that's ever happened, and they covered it up. Just like here it is on the front page of USA Today. This is a few days ago. Trump property buyers shield their IDs as if Donald Trump is giving them something, and which is basically a character destroying story to try to destroy his character with innuendo when there's no crimes committed. And here we have the real story. This is when Jeff Sessions, and this should have been on the front page, folks. Would this have sold more newspapers? Jeff Sessions says, Russian collusion, appalling and detestable lie. Jeff Sessions ate their lunch. Shouldn't that have been on the front page? Isn't that the big story of USA Today? This is more of thought-shaping, propaganda, lie by omission. That's it. You know, the other thing that Jeff Sessions took issue with the hearings that he was in was that, you know, this Mayflower Hotel meeting. I mean, a bunch of ambassadors come there. The President of the United States is speaking there, and they're trying to make out like Jeff Sessions met with the Russian ambassador Kislyak. He must have met him in a room somewhere. Total lie. Didn't happen. And what struck me this week is how desperate they are. Desperate. Comey. I mean, for him to take a memo, and that's classified information, folks. I don't care. A meeting with one of the biggest investigations going on, a one-on-one closed-door meeting with the president by yourself. You're taking a meeting, and the information discussed in that meeting certainly is classified, privileged information, and then you write it down and you give it to your law school professor buddy to leak to the New York Times. Nobody has still seen the memo. Nobody has seen this memo yet. There's a memo. Nobody's seen it. Where is it? Who has it? And, you know, my question to Robert Mueller is, you know, and I think he should step down. He does have a personal relationship. How long have you talked to James Comey? Do you have a copy of this memo? We need to see the memo. When was the memo written? You know, that all the people that Mueller is loading up, which is, you know, this is a scam. I mean, and for James Comey to come out and say, I leaked this memo. I mean, James Counsel, the former assistant deputy of the assistant director of the FBI, came out months ago and said that the Clinton charity is a global conspiracy, is a huge criminal conspiracy. That's what he called it. The Clinton charity. That as soon as she left off, she wasn't going to be president. Donations to the charity, boom, dried up, and now reportedly it's shutting down. Not a charity, folks. So if you take a look at this high-level thing from way up above in this stupid Russia collusion, which there's nothing there. They still have yet to name a single thing that Donald Trump has actually been involved in collusion. Yes, I mean, General Flynn supposedly didn't report some type of income. This while you know, President Clinton is making hundreds of thousands of dollars for speeches in Russia. This while, you know, tens of millions of dollars of our uranium production is being transferred to Russian interests. But, you know, General Flynn not disclosing some business relationship or something is some major thing, which incidentally, Flynn has not been charged with anything yet. He's not been charged. So if you look at the absolute shrill pitch, this desperate attempt to try to get something to impeach President Trump, to destroy President Trump, when all these other huge crimes went on in the Obama administration, I think you have your answer as to why they're going to keep going with this. This is going to destroy the Democrat Party. It's certainly, when this comes out, and another thing, and it is going to come out. You know, here we have James Comey. You know, they're talking about they went freaked out when James Comey got fired. Why? Where did James Comey get fired? Oh, out in California. So he finds out that Donald Trump has fired him. Guess what happens to his office? Boom! It gets locked down. I'll bet you Jeff Sessions was standing in Comey's office and called President Trump and said, hey, listen, I'm here. You can go ahead and do what you want to do now. And he did that. He was standing in the office to lock it down, to collect all the evidence in Comey's office. Comey thought he was going to stay. He thought he was bulletproof. So after all this time, Comey has his office basically commandeered, locked down, everything in it sucked up by the Jeff Sessions Justice Department. He's out in California. He can't even call anybody to stop them from going in the office. He certainly doesn't have access to come into the building any longer. Think about this. People said, "Oh, Donald Trump was so cruel." Nope, it was cunning, and it had to be done. If you have to fight and you have to fight back, you need evidence. And boy, I'll bet you, Comey's office better be white as snow. It better be white as snow. So what do we have? We have this innuendo. Comey says flat out, he didn't tell me to obstruct. He didn't say to stop the investigation into General Flynn. Flynn had already been fired. I've told you this before. And he'd been fired, the day or two before. And you fired me? I would hope you'd let this go. Really not a big deal, considering all the absolute fraud that went on in the Obama and Clinton administration. Unbelievable. So the big picture, why would they risk all these felonies and all these leaks? Because there's a lot of people that have dirty, criminal, and I say treasonous hands. And the longer Donald Trump stays in, the more powerful he gets. And the mainstream media destroyed their names, destroyed their reputations during the election with all the phony polls, and there's no way Trump can win, and Clinton's up by 12 points, and total lie. Propaganda. The polls were meant to be wrong to make you think that Hillary was a cinch and that don't go to the polls, in my humble opinion. And then this has gone into hyperdrive because their reputations have been destroyed with false narratives and phony stories, inaccurate reporting, anonymous sourcing, documents they don't see. Each one of these leaks from these 5 people are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 anonymous sources, 5 anonymous leaks, 5 felonies, all created to say that now Donald Trump is under investigation. Of course, they couldn't leak out for weeks and weeks that he wasn't under investigation. So, folks, this whole Russian investigation, and now Robert Mueller loading up with all these Democratic donors and Democrat lawyers, they're going to take, they're in desperation mode to try to stop Trump from gaining power and revealing massive crimes and massive treason that goes all the way to the top. This is without a doubt a fight between good and evil. And just to put a little sprinkles on the cake here for this section, I thought it was pretty funny for Vladimir Putin to come out and say, "Hey, Putin ready to provide political asylum to former FBI Director Comey." This is TASS news agency. The Russians want to provide, give him a room next to Snowden, who actually is a hero, and Comey is not. Just a few more things I want to cover. The Federal Reserve raised key interest rates. They raised key interest rates another quarter of a point, which, they've been saying they were going to do it, so they had to. I called Greg Manarino, said, "Give me your take." Manarino says, "Listen, man, they're playing poker, and they're signaling that it is in control when the Fed is weak. So they're trying to tell everybody, oh, we said we're going to raise rates, and by golly, we did." And they're raising rates into a declining economy. That's just as Gregory Manarino saying that. That's a lot of people, with the Armageddon, with the cars, the Carmageddon, they're calling it. All the sales are off. I think General Motors is closing a plant in Kansas City that makes Malibus for 5 weeks. The sales are all soft. Incentives are sky high. I think, one of the few companies that actually eked out a profit was Ford, and I think also Kia. Everybody else has been losing money and cutting production. There's a glut of cars. General Motors has something like 90 days of inventory on all their lots in America. This is unbelievable. So, and then also real estate is beginning to roll over, and yet the Federal Reserve has announced that they are cleaning out they're cleaning up their balance sheet and getting rid of all their mortgage-backed securities. Of course, they're getting out while the market's on its high, and they may already have gotten out. They may be just telling us that they're going to get out, and they're going to be selling their mortgage-backed securities because they were junk when they bought them, and now they're worth something because they juked the market and they ricocheted the real estate market back up. But I digress. And Manarino just says, hey, this is all about confidence. The Fed is stuck. They have to act, even though it's wrong, and they're raising rates into a declining economy, and it's just all about confidence. This is Manarino at TradersChoice.net. Happy to give his on-the-spot analysis of that. Finally, and I just want to bring this up. one of the things I've been saying for the last several weeks, and this has happened before, and then it died down, and then Trump came in, and then everybody got quiet, right? So the market shot up, according to Trump, 3,000 or 4,000 points. I wouldn't be ballyhooing that because I think that could get knocked off pretty quickly if people lose confidence in the Fed's intervention. That's what we're talking about. People have confidence in central bank intervention because there's no organic, real growth. We haven't reinvented the internet again. I mean, this is all central bank intervention. This is Kyle Bass, who's a big money manager, a multi-billion-dollar money manager, and he's talking about China's credit bubble metastasizing. Like cancer. He's still short the yuan. Now, you can't have an economy the size of China go under without it affecting the entire world. It's the number 2 economy of the world, and really it's been the growth engine of the world, but yet Kyle Bass is talking about their economy, their credit bubble metastasizing. Well, folks, if that blows, the whole world economy is gonna go down. And so, one of the things I've been telling people is that we've been saying this for a while. Some people say, well, this has been going on for 3 years. And yes, it's actually 3-4 years. You've been telling the thing's going to blow up. Well, actually, it should have blown up a long time. Should have blown up pretty big time in 08. But, they basically, pumped blood and oxygen into a corpse, and they got it to breathe and got blood to flow again in the economy. But they're still doing the same emergency measures they've been doing since about 2009? We are in emergency posture still today with the low. And the Fed's trying to make you think we're coming out of the emergency. We're going to raise rates again. See, we did it. But yet, the Federal Reserve has a trading desk. All the central banks control the markets. There aren't really any markets anymore. You've heard about this before. How long can that go on? I don't know. Charles Zenner says it stops sometime this fall. Other people say when Donald Trump does his budget tries to raise a debt ceiling, you've heard Steve Mnuchin talking about his Treasury Secretary raising the debt ceiling. I don't know. Are the Democrats going to stand in the way? Are they going to tank the nation, the Democrats, to try to score political points? And I think they will. Yes, I think they will. The other big question is simply this: if all else fails, will they do what Gerald Celente says and says we'll just take you to war? If all else fails. Now we have more sanctions on Russia in a 98-2 vote in the Senate. And they also restricted Donald Trump's ability to cut the sanctions back. Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, says, wow, that really takes a lot of political chips off the table for us. I mean, you're really kind of painting us into a corner. And again, this is about the Ukraine situation, stuff in Syria, where the United States has been backing the Kurds, yes. I guess you could call those good guys against Turkey, a NATO member, but a lot of support has been given to ISIS. I mean, I know they want to say this is the Free Syrian Army and this facade, this absolute fraud of calling it a Free Syrian Army when it is indeed ISIS and Al Qaeda that is going after the Assad regime. And, why would the United States be fighting Russia if Russia and the United States have the same goal to destroy ISIS? Why would we be increasing sanctions on Russia? And, tit for tat, Russia has sanctions on us. As I told you a week or so ago, I had this long list of companies, 3M, Caterpillar, Yahoo. There's 120 big companies doing business in Russia. The reprisals against the U.S. and U.S. companies could be stunning. And this is it with a backdrop of a very weak economy that's still under emergency measures by any yardstick. We have suppressed interest rates. We have easy money policy. We have emergency measures going on and have been going on since about, 2008, since the meltdown. So do they take us to war? I mean, how desperate will the evil powers, and this really is a fight between good and evil. This really, it is coming down to that. It is a fight between good and evil. I know they held their hands this week in Washington after the shooting and saying, Kumbaya, we're going to try to get, they're not going to get, that's not going to happen. Because getting along means allowing the Trump administration to expose fraud and treason on an epic level in Washington that goes all the way to the White House, in my humble opinion. So buckle up, folks. The ride's getting rougher from here. Lots of turbulent air. But fear not. Prepare yourself mentally, physically, above all spiritually. Fear not, God the Father and His Son, Jesus Christ, are firmly in control.